Hey Wargamers, Mike from epicduckstudios here, back with the Epic Hobby, and today I'm going to show you how to base coat an Alpha Legion Space Marine without using an airbrush. This is a follow-up to my last video where I airbrushed the base coat on, just showing you how to get a similar effect when you don't have that tool handy. I'm going to begin by getting some colors ready on my palette. First up is MacLeod Blue. I'll also be using some Vallejo Turquoise. This is similar to Hawk Turquoise from the old GW range, or Sotek Green from the new range. I'll also be using some Sybarite Green. And to make all of these into metallic paints, I'm going to add the lightest metallic I have. In this case, I'm going to use Vallejo Silver. Any bright silver paint should work just fine here. If you have access to Vallejo Metallic Medium, you can try using that as well, but it will make the paint a little bit brighter. I've added 1 drop of silver to each of the 3 paints that I prepared, and I'm just mixing that in individually so that they become a little bit metallic. Once all 3 colors are ready, I'm going to base coat the entire Marine with the metallic MacLeod Blue. This is a pretty normal sloppy base coat where I just want to apply the color evenly to the entire model, get into all the nooks and crannies under the arm and the elbows, stuff like that, the areas that are kind of hard to reach, and just make sure this color gets everywhere at this point. I'm leaving a couple areas towards the top of the head and near the top of the shoulders a little bit bare with this, but it's absolutely not essential, and I'm going to hit them with another color later anyhow. I should note that this is going to be a little bit of a different effect than the airbrushed Space Marine. It's not going to be an identical match. Because I'm using very different paints from different manufacturers and different techniques, I'm really not going to get there, but I'm going to get something that still looks distinctly Alpha Legion. Now I'm going to move on to the metallic turquoise I mixed up and start applying that pretty liberally to the areas I really haven't base coated yet, and any sort of upward facing surfaces, things that I sort of feel really need a general highlight. I'm spending a lot of time loading the brush correctly here because I wanted to have a good paint reservoir without having a large drip of the paint anywhere on the brush. And basically I'm just working my way around the model, applying this to the most visible surfaces and leaving the MacLeod Blue in the deeper recesses. It was right about here that I realized that the areas I didn't apply the MacLeod Blue to are just not behaving correctly. It's getting a little bit harder to get the turquoise on them. So I'm going back to my MacLeod Blue mix just a little bit and applying it to the sort of bald spots on the model to make sure that everything has a good base coat before I continue. Now that everything's got an even base coat of the MacLeod Blue, I can go back to the turquoise and apply it basically with a dry brush effect over the entire top surface of the model. I'm just going to keep working my way around the model, applying the turquoise in a dry brushing fashion, leaving the MacLeod Blue in the deeper recesses and the darker shadows, so that there's this kind of cool transition between the purplish tint of the MacLeod Blue and the greenish tint of the turquoise that really kind of lends to that Alpha Legion mystery kind of feel. Basically, when you're done, no one should be 100% sure what color they're even looking at. At this point, I'm on my 3rd or 4th pass with the turquoise, and you can see it's really starting to build up a really nice shade variation between it and the MacLeod Blue. Finally, it's time to move on to the Sybarite Green. This is going to be applied again using a dry brush pattern, but in a very, very sparing area, really just across the top of the head, the shoulder pads, the backpack, and maybe just a little bit on the arms and feet. What it's doing is creating a bit of a highlight while also taking that transition from the purplish blue to the greenish blue a little bit further towards green. At this point, I want to do some true dry brushing, so I'm busting out a towel just to blot away the extra paint from the brush so that I can really do an honest dry brush with this color. The more I build this up, the more it kind of really creates that true iridescent look of going from a purple to a blue to a green, all with a little bit of a metallic sheen in it. It doesn't have the sort of hot rod look that the airbrushed Alpha Legion does, but it's definitely metallic and it does the job. With the base coat done, I'm going to wash the entire miniature with Guilliman Blue Glaze. Now this is actually where I think I make a little bit of a mistake, because I honestly feel, looking back at it after editing the video, that using Drakenhof Nightshade would work a little bit better. The paint job on this miniature ends up looking quite bright, and a little bit of a Drakenhof Nightshade wash, even if I thinned it down a little to just really bring out some of the shadows, would have gone a long way to toning the model down. You'll see what I mean towards the end of the video. There's certainly nothing wrong with the effect I get here, but I think it could have really been improved upon by adding a little bit of a Drakenhof Nightshade wash afterwards. So as I'm applying this wash, I'm actually going to use two brushes. First, there's the smaller brush for applying it, and second, there's this large kind of, I call it a beater brush, and I use this when I need to just get some extra work done. It's a larger brush with a really nice reservoir in the bristles that I just don't really care about keeping in good shape, and I use it to do things like suck up extra wash, dry brush things. It's just sort of there to do messy jobs and do them well. You'll see that as I apply the glaze to the model, there's areas where it kind of pools up, and I'll spread that out or just blot it up with this extra brush just to get it out of the way. It really helps the glaze kind of go on more evenly and takes care of any pooling that might normally happen with the glaze. Using a second brush as an eraser is kind of one of my favorite techniques. Even when I'm not using glazes, it's really handy to have another brush nearby that's just clean, that you haven't used for painting, and you can just pick up and use to wipe some paint away from the model when you need to. So I'm just going to continue working around the model, applying the Guilliman Blue Glaze, and making sure it gets into all the nooks and crannies. Again, in this video, I'm really just covering the base coat here. I'm not going to get into detailing the miniature. Now that the Guilliman Blue Glaze is across the whole model, it's definitely tinted it more towards the blue side. I'm going to put it here beside the airbrushed base coat for comparison, which I've already done some detailing on. You can see they are very distinct, very different colors, but they both share some common traits, which is that they're a very nice metallic blue, and they have some color transitions going from blue to green. The nice thing about this effect is some people seem to think the Alpha Legion wear purple armor, some seem to think they wear green, some seem to think they wear blue, and this kind of hits all three, and it's really easy to take it to one end or the other to meet your own personal taste. In the next video, I'll show you how to freehand a scale pattern on the armor, which really sells the Alpha Legion look. Until then, do something epic.